This is a Tesla Model Y Performance. So in this video, I'm going to give you guys my opinion, my review on this car, and at the end of the video, I'm going to answer the question, is this the performance electric SUV you should get and buy with your own money? On the exterior, the Model Y Performance is basically identical to the Model Y and Model Y Long Range, except for a few small details like a rear deck lid spoiler, a red underline under dual motor indicating this is the performance version, and also 21-inch wheels. Though this car is on some 19-inch aftermarket winter wheels that are painted gold, which actually look pretty cool against that black paint color. This is basically identical in styling to those other two models, which I think is a little bit sad and a missed opportunity. They could have made, the performance version just a little bit more special with a few details here and there. Other than that, it's an okay looking car. I think the rear 3/4 is its best, angle. It has a little bit of stance from that angle. From the profile, it's also okay. My least favorite is the front end, where it just looks a little bit bobbly. I think there are other better looking, electric SUVs on the market. Audi Q4 e-tron Sportback, Kia EV6, Mustang Mach-E GT. Yeah, it's okay. It's just not my favorite. Inside the interior of the Model Y Performance, things can be best described as very simple and minimalistic. And for a lot of people, I think that is perfect. For other people, that may just be a little bit too boring and bland. I really think the Model Y and, Teslas in general could benefit from having a few different optional extras for interior trim, maybe interior colors. I mean, this performance version can be had with black or white seats, and the only difference from the long range I could find in the interior is this dark trim. So from where I'm sitting and comparing it to the competitors, the performance trim doesn't feel special. It doesn't feel special at all. And I think that is a missed opportunity. Look at something like the Kia EV6 GT. You can have some awesome sports seats, just separating that model from the normal long range version. So I think Tesla has missed an opportunity to even make more money, to make these cars a little bit more personalized. But from, interior quality and build, there's nothing to complain about, because this interior feels very solidly put together. Materials are nice. This has, this faux leather. This is a completely vegan-free interior from what I can understand. No animal skins here. And Tesla has, in my opinion, the best feeling faux leather or vegan leather on the market. So everything is just really nice to the touch. Soft touch materials on the dashboard. You have, this faux leather here, which is stitched on the center console. Everything just feels very well put together. And then you have the centerpiece here, which is this 15-inch tablet, this screen here. We're going to cover this in a separate section of the video. We're going to dive deep into this. But, overall, ergonomics are really nice. You have this large center console here that, has a large storage bin below here. You have dual cup holders. You have this large armrest with more storage here. And then you have, dual wireless chargers that actually work, which are in a really nice position. They have this really nice, microfiber, almost Alcantara-like material. So, I mean, quality is really nice. And also the space in the cabin, I mean, it feels very spacious. You sit high up, you have this huge greenhouse. You can see that the windscreen is really far away from you, so you get this very airy feeling. So sitting here and driving this car is really nice. It's a really nice driving position. You have lots of adjustability, though these seats are very comfortable actually. I'm not going to complain, but they could benefit from having at least an option of perforation. Now in winter it's nice, or now in fall, but I remember driving Teslas in summer. You do get sweaty after a few hours on the road because the seats don't breathe. And also there's no adjustable, thigh support here. I think I'm just about, tall enough that isn't an issue, but if you're really tall and have long legs, I think on longer trips you can struggle. And room is really nice here in the front cabin. Hopping into the rear seats of the Y, it's a little bit more cramped than in the front seat, especially the door opening. I feel is a little bit too small. So if you have children with a child seat, that may, be a little bit hard to get in and out. And also, there is less space here than I thought. I mean, it's still pretty nice. You have this large panoramic sunroof, so headroom is about this much and knee room is about this much. This seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters, but I think you don't have to be much taller than I am before you may start hitting, the seat back here where you may feel that things are a little bit too cramped. I think some of the competitors like the Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6, even Mustang Mach-E, feel just a little bit more spacious in the rear seat. You have a nice seating position, and also you have a lot of room for your feet underneath the front seat there, but also the seat cushion just seems to be a little bit too short. Quality though is pretty nice. I mean, most manufacturers at this price point are going to give you, hard touch plastics on the rear doors. Tesla don't. The interior build quality on the rear doors feels just as nice as the front doors, though this is hard touch plastics. You also get 2 separate vents for the rear passengers and 2 USB-C ports. In Europe, most manufacturers use the VDA standard for measuring trunk capacity. Tesla, though, don't seem to be using this standard, and they'll tell you that the Model Y has 854 liters of rear trunk capacity, 170 liters of front capacity. But you can compare that trunk capacity number to its competition, because if you measure this cargo spacer up to the belt line where VDA stops measuring, this trunk is around 450 to 500 liters, and then you have maybe 100 additional liters below the floor here, so somewhere between 550 and 600. It's still a very nice and sizable, trunk, but looking at something like a Skoda Enyaq has almost 600 liters up to the belt line, and it's going to have, that wagon shape, that SUV shape, so it's going to give you more cargo capacity above that belt line. From what I could gather online, this being the performance version built at Gigafactory in Berlin and being a brand new car, it should have a net battery capacity of 74 kilowatt hours. But this being a Tesla, depending on where the car is built, when you take delivery of it, and in what market you buy your car, those stats may vary. But as of October 2022, this being a brand new car, this is what I could find out. So just beware, guys, that, take these numbers with a grain of salt, because when you watch this video, when you take delivery of your car, the stats may be different. But this car does make a lot of sense in the Model Y range, because it has 514 kilometers of WLTP rated range, starts at 600,000 kroners here in Norway, about 60,000 euros. In the US, I think that is $62,000, the price over there. And it does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.7 seconds. So, the performance and the range of this car is pretty impressive at this price. But once you, have this car registered on the road with all the options, here in Norway, it's going to be 710,000 kroners with winter wheels and a tow hitch. In the US, even more expensive, $80,000 is what I could spec one to with the same, options. So again, check your market. Pricing may vary. And also here in Norway, we have a long range version and also an entry-level rear wheel drive version, which aren't that much cheaper. I'm going to give you guys the specs on the screen. So I think if I was looking to buy a Model Y, the performance version does make a lot of sense. And this car and the long range version has a peak charging speed of 250 kilowatts. Again, I wasn't able to achieve that, but conditions were probably less than ideal. And 10 to 80% should be done in around 25 minutes. Now let's take a look at the cabin tech and driver ergonomics. As usual, we're going to start with the steering wheel, which is a nice shape. It feels high quality. I really do like this, this faux leather that they have here on the steering wheel. It does feel nice, though it does get a little bit of dirty here. It is a bit gray. So you have one button on the left side and one on the right side, which is also a scroll wheel. So you can press it in, play and pause your audio here. You can scroll it up or down for the volume, and then you can push it left or right to skip forward or backwards on the track, which is pretty easy. And then you have your right scroll wheel here, which adjusts your adaptive cruise control or autopilot beta here, which is called in this version. There's also, an optional FSD version that isn't available in Europe, that is under testing in the US. It's a big question, will FSD, full self-driving, ever be, available on these cars. Regulations may, stop that from ever happening. We really don't know. I'm not going to touch upon that in this video, but this, controls your adaptive cruise control or autopilot functionality. So you can scroll up and down to increase and decrease your speed, left and right to increase and decrease your distance, and then you activate it here with the gear selector stock here. So you press it either twice down or you press it all the way down. There is an indentation, so you have those two options. And I do applaud Tesla for having physical buttons on the steering wheel because it just works really nice. But I wish there were a few more buttons for just a little bit more functionality. It is very simple in its layout, but I do think a few more buttons, maybe making it look a little bit more cluttered, would help with functionality. For instance, you don't have a resume button for your adaptive cruise control, and also if you want to cancel your auto steer, you have to tug on the steering wheel until it breaks the lane, which doesn't feel like the safest way to do it in a car that is this modern. And also there's no other way to turn off that lane centering, that auto steer, other than tugging the steering wheel or turning off the adaptive cruise control altogether. And also, you don't have any switches for the mirrors. You can see here down on the doors, you have switches for the windows, but not for the mirrors. You have to go into the infotainment system. So I just wish there was a little bit more functionality. Also, having that gear selector here on the right side takes away some of the wiper functionality, which I think in the Nordic countries especially is important. If you live in a place where you have winter, if you live in a place where there's a lot of rain, you're going to be using a lot of those secondary functions a lot in a car. So I think some of these competitors does this better, but I'm going to applaud Tesla for having physical buttons because that is really nice. So moving over to the center console, I mean, this is the center screen, the center display, the center of the interior. You don't have a display in front of the driver, as you guys can see, and I don't find that to be an issue at all because you have your speed up here in the left corner, and it just takes a little getting used to. Instead of looking right in front of you, you're going to look to the right, and it's always, clear of view. There's no steering wheel in the way, so I think it works really nice. This screen is 15 inches, and there is some functionality that the last time I drove a Tesla is now missing that I find a little bit annoying after some of the latest updates. For instance, here on the left side, you had your trip computer, so you could, reset the trip, you could have your consumption, you could have, the distance and all information like that. And now you have to go into vehicle settings, and then you have to go to Reiser. Yes, this is in Norwegian, guys, which will just be your travels. And you have your trip computer information here now, instead of just having it there always available, which is a little bit annoying. But other than that, I mean, it is a nice system to use. Again, I think for simplicity and user-friendliness, I think Polestar with their infotainment system in the Polestar 2 is just a little bit simpler and easier and more intuitive, because a lot of functions here going into the screen here, it's just a bit too much. There is a learning curve here, but I'm pretty sure once you have this car for a few months, maybe a year, you'll get used to it. But again, just collapsing the mirrors, making the mirrors, fold in and out, that you have to go into a sub menu is just a little bit annoying. Also, if you want to turn on your heated steering wheel, that's also in a sub menu here. I just wish, there's so much real estate that there could be, dedicated buttons for some of those things you're going to use a lot, turn on and off. But other than that, I mean, the maps is pretty nice. Navigation and route planning in Tesla is probably the best, or one of the best on the market. Also, again, Polestar 2 does that really, really well. And also built-in Spotify, you have a lot of apps. It's just really easy to use. I mean, I'm nitpicking here, and that's just because I find, the infotainment system is one of the most important things for driver safety and usability in a vehicle. And cars being so alike these days, the infotainment system is a real factor where it's going to differentiate the different cars. Like, for example, the ID cars, if you've seen any of my MEB platform car reviews, is probably the worst on the market, and this is in stark contrast one of the best. And for me, this is a deal breaker, having a good or bad infotainment system, and I think Tesla has one of the best on the market. Now let's take the Model Y out on the road and I'll tell you guys what I think about the driving experience. So the first thing you're going to notice hopping into this cabin is the huge greenhouse and front windscreen, because visibility is just great out of the front and out of the side. Rear visibility, not the best. It's not the worst either, but you know, looking at the mirror, that rear window is a little bit too small. But front visibility is great. You sit high, you have a nice driving position. So a lot of people hopping into a Model Y for the first time, I think you're going to be like blown away, especially coming from a smaller car, how good the visibility is. The second thing you're going to notice, especially in the performance version, is the suspension. So this car is on 19-inch aftermarket wheels, so it does have, you know, more rubber than you would find standard on the 21-inch wheels. But the ride is stiff and a bit choppy, especially on bad pavement. And the biggest difference in the ride is probably between the long range and the performance, where the performance version is that bit stiffer. People have complained about the long range version being too stiff, too choppy, too bouncy. If that's your opinion, you're not going to like the ride in the performance version. But again, test drive these cars to see what you think about it. Also, where do you live? The roads are going to be different here, where we're, you know, in a suburb outside of Oslo. The roads aren't too bad, but if we were in actually Oslo proper, I would probably be cussing now because it is pretty bad. I wish there was, you know, adaptive dampers or maybe an air suspension option. At least adaptive dampers. I mean, air suspension at this price point is probably asking too much, but just, you know, some option to give the car wider range in its suspension, because, you know, this sporty and stiff suspension is nice for sporty driving, but in the city it's not the best. But what is really nice here, we have a small gap here, and then it's just, you know, squeezing that right pedal, because the performance is amazing in this car. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.7 seconds, more than you can ever need. You don't need a faster car than this, especially if this is your family car. I mean, it's pretty awesome, the performance version. Here I can show you guys the functionality of auto steer and adaptive cruise control. You activate it there, you get this nice, you know, animation here. It shows the lines blue on the right and left side, meaning that, you know, it is indicating that. And, you know, you press it twice down here to activate the auto steer, or you press it all the way down, and then you can adjust your speed here. This being in Europe, you have to have your hands on the steering wheel, but you can see here that it will, you know, hold the lanes really nicely. But now it's giving me, you know, first a message down here to put my hands on the steering wheel. If I don't put my hands on the steering wheel, it's going to blink blue here on the top of the left side of the screen. Again, I'm going to let go of the steering wheel. You guys can see that. First, we're going to get a message down here on the bottom side. But, you know, it took shorter time now than it did before. Let's see. How long will it let me drive like this? Okay, it says here, just nudge the steering wheel, and if you don't do that, it's going to blink, give a blue flash there. And if I totally ignore it, it's going to disengage completely. We are in one pedal driving mode, so that means, yeah, it's going to give me one visible cue, audible cue, and then it's still going to let you go on for a while. Okay, we're going to a place where the speed limit is different now. It's going to start beeping at me, but it will let you actually drive quite a while. And there it disengages. It gives you that red sign there. And then since we are in one pedal driving, there it does come to a complete stop. Okay. And if you do this too much, ignore it. It will actually deactivate auto steer, autopilot altogether. And you can't activate it again before you stop the car. Like now, it won't let me. I'll have to stop the car and then activate it again manually. But, you know, noise-wise, the cabin is pretty nice. I mean, it's more noisy than the MEB platform cars. Kia EV6, Hyundai Ioniq 5 will be more quiet and also more comfortable. But it is a really nice drive on the motorway. You're not going to complain too much. It also depends on your starting point. But I think that right here, the road is smooth here, but I do feel, you know, everything in the asphalt. I do feel small bumps everywhere. So if you're sensitive to that, I don't think this is your car. Handling is pretty nice. Steering is really quick. That is also something to get used to, but not the most precise. So I've, you know, driven these cars on the Autobahn in Germany at high speed, And if you live in Germany, I think the steering is too quick because it is not precise enough. There's a little bit play. I wish the steering was more precise, and also there is no feedback. It does feel like a video game. Again, I drive a Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo as a daily. That is my my reference point. But last week I drove the Cupra Born, which I think has much nicer steering than this, though it is slower. So if you don't like feel but you like fast steering, this is pretty nice. Lastly, I want to talk about the throttle and brake in one pedal calibration. So this has one pedal driving. You can deactivate that, but if I go off the throttle, it's going to bring the car to a complete stop. You can see here, if I remove my foot completely, the car comes to a 100% stop, and then I have to go on the throttle again. Again, I think Tesla has one of the best one pedal and also just the throttle and brake calibration in any electric car. Maybe Polestar does it a little bit better, or maybe I'm just used to the Polestar system or calibration a little bit better. Again, we're nitpicking at this point, but this is a note to a lot of the Germans where they don't have full one pedal driving and the calibration is a little bit wonky. Some of the things I talked about, for example, in Mercedes, especially the lower tiered ones, EQA and EQB, is that the calibration of all the controls doesn't feel organic. Here, the steering weight matches the one pedal deceleration. It matches, how hard you go on the pedal to get throttle, and also once you get on the brake, it does match that. So I think, the calibration here is on point. One of the best, setup electric drivetrains on the market. If you're looking to buy an electric SUV, either for yourself or you and your spouse, maybe you have a few children, there has never been this many choices and this many good choices. And even if you want a performance version, there are a lot of choices. I mean, electric cars are fast, from the get-go. Their performance versions are just crazy. I mean, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in an electric SUV where you could comfortably seat 5 adults, doing 0 to 100 kilometers in 3.7 seconds. I mean, that is just mind-blowing. I grew up in the 90s, guys. So you'd have to buy a supercar to get that performance. So it's just insane that you can get this much performance in this package for what seems to be a reasonable price. And all of these EVs pretty much cost the same, between 60, 70, maybe sometimes 80,000 euros, dollars, 600 to 800,000 kroners. And I think at the end of the day, it is really down to personal preference what you buy, because I think fundamentally the Tesla Model Y, even though it has a few flaws, is a very good vehicle. For me personally, the ride may be something I wouldn't be able to live with, but also depending on where I live. Also, I'm not a huge fan of the way you have to engage and disengage, and the lack of functionality with the auto steer, which is a function I use a lot. I don't only use it on the motorway, I use it on B roads. I use it here in the suburbs even. So for me, having to activate it the way you do and having that audible on and off, for me, it just gets a little bit tiresome. And also, if you saw my motorway range test, this car does experience, a lot of phantom braking. But again, we're just nitpicking at the things because this is a spacious, well-built electric car that has a lot of room. It's comfortable, though, again, the suspension is not its best. It's relatively quiet. The infotainment system is almost perfect. I still prefer, what you get in a Polestar 2, but again, we're just nitpicking here. I think if somebody told me, here, this is the key to a Tesla Model Y performance, you're going to have this car for a year or two, I would be more than happy. So go out and test drive the car. And again, of course, we have to talk about the supercharging network. If you live in Norway, that is not a deal breaker. It's not that important. Maybe if you live further north where you don't have a lot of, 50 or 150 kilowatt chargers, and also if you live in other markets where, your only viable option if you're going to have an electric car and travel long distance is a Tesla because of the supercharger network, you'll have to, independently assess that for yourself, because, I can't speak for all markets. But here in Norway, it's not really an issue most places. I drive all different types of electric cars. I've had 3 non-Teslas, and that has never been an issue for me. So I mean, but for a lot of people, depending on where you live, again, that is a huge issue. But I don't want to make the outro too long here, guys, but I really want to give this car a fair chance, because some people think I don't like Tesla. I really do like Tesla, but they're not my favorite car because of, you know, the way they set up their cars. I do prefer a more comfortable car, and if it was me with my money, I would probably, even though I kind of, you know, shat on it for its ride, Mustang Mach-E GT, the ride there doesn't seem that bad now compared to this car, but also EV6 and EV6 GT. I haven't driven the GT version yet, but I really do like the normal EV6. So I would probably spend my money on that. That's going to be the same money. And even though it doesn't have the same performance, you can get a really nice equipped Audi Q4 e-tron Sportback, which is going to be more comfortable. It's going to be more quiet. Interior also looks nicer, it's more exciting, and more customization. You're going to have more options for interior colors and just different types of trim, but it's not going to have near the performance of this car. 0 to 100 kilometers in like 6.2 seconds. But again, there are so many options, and I don't even know what I would choose myself, but probably Kia EV6 GT. Hopefully I will be testing that car in the near future. So guys, let me know what you think, which car you would choose in the comment section down below. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.